Hello, everyone. My name is Keith, and I'm happy to welcome you to this chat I had recently with Michael Kirchner, President of the Board of Children of Peace International, or COPI for short. In Singapore, we have a very supportive group that has contributed for more than 10 years under the banner of Friends of COPI. I asked Mike to have a conversation about how COPI is doing, as everyone is keen to hear the latest. Here's the conversation. So now that the world is, learning to manage COVID a little bit better, it's nice to hear that that COPI has been able to continue its work then in Vietnam. Could you tell us a little bit more about what the team is currently working on, such as the weekend medical missions or the scholarships that you've been providing recently? Anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's important to expand a little on COPI. We're celebrating in 2023 30 years in Vietnam. So founded the organization in 1993. Yes, so we will have been around 30 years, and it's fortunate because in that 30 years we've been able to develop such a solid core and a group of volunteers and team members in Vietnam that by the time COVID did come, totally unexpected and totally, out of the blue, we still had an infrastructure in place, where we could continue some of the work that we've done. And I think that was one of the blessings. It was kind of like the proof of the pudding, if you will. We've always had hope that it would work because COPI is bigger than Bing Raibaki and bigger than Mike Kirchner. It's a standalone 30-year-old organization, and we proved that. The weekend medical missions are something that is pretty amazing. I mentioned earlier that we go on 2 medical missions a year, and really what we are, more closely defining them, they're really well-child clinics, I think, because we don't do any major medical procedures or anything there. We do some dental work, and we do some, basic physical inspections and stuff, and a lot of hygiene training and stuff, but they're well-child clinics. And so we've gotten that down to, it's like a well-oiled machine. We have the right number of people. We have highly trained medical professionals in Vietnam who go on these missions on a regular basis, and they know exactly what they're doing. But we only went twice a year. And several of these doctors and nurses were bit by the COPI bug and really wanted to do more. So before COVID, they started meeting up on Friday evenings, and they would travel to the poorest of the poor areas, arrive in the middle of the night, sleep on the floor of a Buddhist temple or a Catholic church or wherever they could get in. And in the morning, set up a clinic. Of course, this was prearranged with the organization ahead of time, but they would set up a clinic, and all day long they would do a medical clinic for children and adults. And they did this up to 50 times a year. I mean, that's every weekend. They would be gone from Friday night until late Saturday night. They would pack up after they finished Saturday and travel home and arrive home, midnight on Saturday night or something. And but that's how dedicated they were, and they continued to do this.
Wonderful, yeah.
And it was such a great thing. They continued to do that despite restrictions. They had to change where they were going and everything during COVID. But they were still able to do some medical missions and change some of the things that we provided.
I'm sure it must have been a little bit difficult due to the pandemic, but a little bit of adaptability was involved, I would assume.
Well, I think that's if we were to talk about lessons learned during COVID, I think that was one of them, and that is that we need to be flexible, that they were very flexible. There were times when the city, say the Ho Chi Minh City, was locked down, where they could only go out certain days to shop. And so they had to coordinate that where they could shop, and then they distributed food in their own local areas, each one of the members, because food insecurity the need, for that, and that kind of thing, grew exponentially. If you can only imagine, Keith, you've been to Ho Chi Minh City and you know what a popular tourist attraction that is.
Yeah.
Well, if you shut that spigot off and now there isn't one single tourist in the entire city, you think of the hundreds of thousands of service workers that are there that no longer have any income or, any means of support. So the teams, instead of just doing the same things they've been doing for years, they started addressing other issues. They were delivering medications, they were delivering food and stuff like this. So yeah, it was a wonderful experience. If there is a bright side to a global pandemic.
That does sound wonderful, Mike. Are there any other developments during this time that you think has really helped COPI expand in Vietnam, even during the pandemic period or even now?
Well, I think I think as far as developments go, maybe it's a case of you don't really know what you've got till it's gone, as the song goes.
That's very true.
But I think there's many areas and many organizations, schools, even maybe some government workers who didn't realize how much COPI impacted them and their kids until we weren't there. And so we got a lot of them reaching out to us and saying, hey, we miss you. When are you coming back? And we develop stronger ties, with all these people. And it's not just because we give them money, because we don't. Most of the time we don't give money. We give services and we provide scholarships for kids, and it's just the in-kind services that we provide. But we really felt that we were sorely missed. And I really think that the relationships we developed during that 2-year period, by constantly being in touch with all these officials and all these school principals and all these social workers and all these members of PACOM, which is the People's Aid Coordinating Committee. It's the organization that kind of coordinates all nonprofits that work in Vietnam. And I think it became stronger. Our ties with them became stronger. And that certainly will enable us to work more efficiently as we move forward in Vietnam.
That's good to hear, Mike. It actually reminded me about what I did when I went from the medical mission trip. I actually did the hygiene training with them.
Yeah.
Well. I actually helped teach the kids how to, wash their hands and brush their teeth. I actually also remember, I brought a camera just to take pictures of things. And they were so fascinated by that camera as well.
Yep.
So while I was helping them wash their hands and brush their teeth, I was like, here's the camera, please dry your hands before you look at it, thank you. Yeah. And then they all crowded around me while they were doing that before moving on to the next station as well. But
And that's great to hear that, Keith, because we've had medical professionals that have traveled with us that said that's one of the most important things that we do during a medical mission is teaching these kids basic hygiene principles, because you could see as you were showing the kids that many of them had never held a toothbrush before, and they didn't know what it was or what it was for. But so it's from the simplest thing like that to whatever other medical help we could give, simple medical help we could give during the mission trip. And of course the dental, they often are there for long hours after everyone else is done. The dentists are still working because they've got so much work to do. Dedication, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Speaking of, was there a period of time that was particularly challenging for the children? Have any families come back to you? Have they shown any updates or so on, as you were talking about how they asked for the COPI's return as well?
Yeah, I think 2021 was the most challenging period. 2020, Vietnam did very well in as far as managing COVID. They did an early lockdown. When we left on January 31st of 2020, when I left, they had decided to close schools. And of course, everyone was already wearing a mask and everything. So they did very well in 2020, and they had very few cases. However, in 2021, things almost seemed like it was back to normal, and they opened up international travel again, and COVID came in with some international visitors and some international business people. And then 2021 was a very, very difficult year. And that's when our team really found that they had to deal with other things like food insecurity and other things, much more than, just it's no more enough just to do a weekend medical trip or something. You really have to feed these people. And that is everywhere. I mean, I've interviewed principals here in the United States that said, Mike, a kid can't learn without food in his belly and clothes on his back, and those are universal principles. And those are some of the basic things that we had to address. All of a sudden, a population that was getting by because they had regular sources of income are no longer getting by. And so, you have to take a step back and provide even more basic help than you were able to provide before. So, like I said, food deliveries, clothing deliveries, unpacking my bags. I'll be heading over again in January, and unpacking some winter scarves and hats that some volunteers knitted, and everything here. For the kids up north, because it gets very cold up north, and a lot of them don't have winter clothes. So, those are just the ways that.
Speaking of the kind of support COPI provides, I notice your background is what is that? Are those children looking at a computer?
They are, and that is 2019. It's in Vinh Long province. We had what we call phase one. And this is a little bit of a story, if I will, because it has ties into our friends in Singapore.
Yeah, sure.
And that in 2009, the New England Key Club, which is a high school service organization, the Key Clubs from all around New England built a school, and it was opened in Vinh Long in 2009. It was a pre-K kindergarten school. Well, in 2012, we built an addition on that school, partnering with the Friends of COPI. The New England Key Club and Friends of COPI partnered to build a huge addition on this school. And then a few years later, Friends of COPI put on a second story on the school. And where I'm going with this is with this new schools, we also had computers in there. And where the kids from Vinh Long and from this little village in Vinh Long, before, when they went on to primary school, they were behind because they had no kindergarten or pre-K school at all. Now that they had access to pre-K and kindergarten and computers, once they went off to primary school, they were actually ahead of many of the others in the province, and that didn't go unnoticed. So PACCOM reached out to COPI and said in 2018 and said, we have so many thousands of kids in the province that don't have computer access or internet access. Can you help us? Wow. So we put out a proposal, and in 2019 we got a foundation. The Wege Foundation provided us money, and we put 102 computers in 9 schools in Vinh Long.
Amazing! Wow.
Well, then in this year, 2022, we went back with money from the Friends of COPI in Singapore and placed another 100 computers in 5 more schools there. So there's still a lot of kids without computer access, but we're chipping away at it, and we're getting them 100 computers at a time. So this is back in 2019, and if you can just see the joy in those kids' faces as they look at the computer for probably the first time or their first week looking at it,
they're captivated by it right now.
They are captivated by it. And this May, we went on May 24th, we visited all the 5 schools. where the 102 computers were placed. And we counted them all and made sure they were all working and all running, and they were. And we had an agreement with the government that to ensure before we even purchased computers that they would be infrastructure for them, that they would have the necessary power, that they would have internet access and in there, because it wouldn't do any good to buy the box and put it there if you couldn't run it. So the government agreed to do that and made sure that the schools had all the power requirements and they had internet access. And so we hooked up the computers, and we visited all 5 schools, saw all of them, went into all their computer classes. Some of the kids were working on anatomy, and that was like so, and some were just doing word processing and learning how to use those programs. And what we're trying to do now is to develop what we feel is a basic like computer curriculum to make sure that it's just not used for frivolously or for games, but we'd really like to say, hey, here's a structure that we would recommend, because they're all brand new at this. There was one teacher. True. There was one teacher who followed us around to 5 schools because she was the computer teacher, so she had a lot of responsibilities there. So anyway, computers are now in Vinglong as a result of what we had done before, and we hope to be able to continue to place more computers as we go along there, But
that's great, Mike. It actually also shows that the support that COPI gives goes beyond just the medical. Technology is something we should support as well in Vietnam, right?
Well, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I think, although COPI since 1997, when they did their first medical mission, COPI's probably been known in the U.S. at least because of these medical missions. But the work that we do with education is probably has greater impact and impacts more children. We give scholarships, and you asked about scholarships before, and I didn't answer you, I don't think. But
no worries.
as you know, or you may know, you may not, but kids have to pay to go to school every year that they go to school, and it's not a lot in U.S. or maybe Singapore standards. It's for K through 12, it's $60. It's about $60 for tuition per year per student. Okay, but if you're a farmer who's making $25 a month or that equivalent, that's a lot of money. And what often happens if you have a number of children, they all don't go to school. Some, and it's chosen by the parents who goes to school. And unfortunately, it's often the boys go to school and the girls, don't, or that's been the history. That's changing somewhat. But so we make sure that we provide as many scholarships as we can. And we do over 1,000 scholarships every year. We also give scholarships to trade schools because not every kid's going to go on to college once they graduate from school. So we and those are about $150 a student per year for tuition. And then college tuition's about $250. That's what they pay for college tuition a year. So we give scholarships for all of those. And like I say, we give over 1,000 scholarships a year. We travel around. We actually give these in person to the kids. And we also do something that I think is unique with COPI, and that is we follow up with all the students that we have given scholarships to. So it's not just like we just give them money and then go away. So we have a part-time employer or employee, in Phu Yen, who her job is to follow up with scholarship students to see how they're doing, to check in on them, to see if there's anything more they need or what else they can do, and kind of acts as, in my words, like a success coach, to try to keep the kids on track and see if they have any issues that might keep them from learning. But, we follow up with the schools to make sure that kids are all attending the schools. And Bing has often said that, education is the only path from the darkness into the light. And she really believes that. And so we have evolved, and our big focus has been on education. I mentioned we built a school. We've built other schools. We built schools in the north as well as the south. We've built dormitories for elementary kids, so they don't have to walk 5 or 6 kilometers a day every day to go back and forth to school. Now they can go in on Monday and stay for the week and just go home for the weekend. So, whatever we can do to make it easier for these kids to learn.
Yeah, it's really good to hear that there's an all-rounded approach to providing the education for these children there.
Yeah.
Sure. Do you mind if I switch gears a little bit?
No,
ask about
sure.
COPI and the team. I've heard that you have a new board member. Is that true?
Yep, we do. As a matter of fact, I know our newest board member is the one you're talking about, but we've actually brought on 3 new board members in the last 2 years. We decided a few years ago to implement term limits here so that we all didn't all of a sudden wake up one day and be all 90 in our 90s and have no young ideas or no young blood or nothing different or new. So we implemented some term limits, and some board members, long-serving board members, began rotating off. And 2 years ago, we brought in a young woman who's an educator from Northern Virginia. And then earlier this year, we brought in 2 more board members, Christine, who was a pastor in Utah, and also Dr. David, who's a doctor in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin. So he's on the board. They've both been longtime supporters, or actually all 3 have been longtime supporters of COPI, and now they're on the board. But our latest board member, we just brought on at the last meeting in November, is Emily Chung. And Emily is a student at Yale University, and she's studying medicine. And Emily, as a young student at Yale, has had a long history with Children of Peace. And she has a very interesting history, but it's probably hers to tell. She is of Vietnamese heritage. And when she was a sophomore in high school, she belonged to Key Club in New England. And she went on and she was elected as the district projects chair for New England. And COPI is one of the district projects that New England supports. And she really studied up on COPI, looked into it, and really developed a passion, and had us come and talk. And we went up and we talked with her and with the group, and she really just said, we want to help you. What can we do? And we said, well, we're looking to build another dormitory up in the Sapa area, up in the northwest corner of Vietnam, at San Sa Ho number 2. San Sa Ho is the village up there.
I see.
And there's San Sa Ho number 1 and San Sa Ho number 2. And so that was her project. And she adopted that as project chair. She developed it. It was going full guns. And then what happened was COVID happened, and, high schools in the United States were affected like everywhere else. And yet she was elected the next year through COVID as the district treasurer, and was even more adamant that they should continue to fundraise and to continue to support this. And then this past year, she was graduating, and she had been elected as governor of the New England District of Key Club, with COPI still as her flagship project. And when Bing and I visited the New England convention, Key Club convention in April, she and her team presented us with a check for $50,000 that they had raised in the past 3 years. So these are high school kids that had raised $50,000 to build a dormitory up in San Sa Ho. So that's an amazing commitment. She is an amazing young woman. As I say, she's now at Yale studying medicine, and hopes to continue on, and we hope to bring her along as part of our medical team in the future. So we have a lot of high hopes for Emily.
That's good to hear that the team is expanding in that way. Yeah.
Yes.
Are there any big plans going forward from here? Is there anything that supporters can look forward to?
Yeah, I think that dormitory project is still ongoing, as I alluded to. We're trying to expand our scholarship and our educational programs, and I make reference to the term success coach, and I think that's a model that we would like to develop over there. And if we can prove it successful in one area, that maybe it can be duplicated throughout the country. So we would like to do educational projects. When we had our little ceremony in Vinh Long in May to inspect the computers and everything is very ceremonial. In Vietnam, they always throw a party for you. So we had a great lunch, and we visited with them, and they thanked us profusely for the computers, but also let us know that there's still thousands of kids that need computers in Vinh Long. So another computer project would certainly be on the horizon. As we look forward, we're still getting our feet under us after COVID. As I said, we were there in May. They did a kind of an abbreviated medical mission in July, just to get back in the swing of things a little, and it went very well. Now, January, we have some meetings, and we have some big plans that we will announce a little later, I think, for our 30th anniversary. And I kind of just maybe want to just throw a teaser out there. We're having we're planning a big project where we can help not only kids but mothers. So this is a cervical cancer screening program that we're going to try to launch in Vietnam, where we can screen probably 1,000 to 1,500 women while we were there. It's another organization that we're partnering with, and it's not firmed up yet, and we don't have details, but we hope to launch that in honor of our 30th anniversary, and in honor of the great contribution that women have given us in our efforts. I mean, Bing actually pointed out to the board at the November meeting that 100% of the doctors in the July mission trip were female doctors, women doctors from Vietnam, and the same with the dentists. So we really have a cadre of dedicated, devoted, very intelligent and hardworking women in Vietnam. You may remember COPI, who was the leader, kind of the leader of the group. She's a retired nurse and a retired professor, and she taught many of the medical professionals in Vietnam. So they're her former students. So when she calls and says, geez, I think you really would like to be involved in COPI, they volunteer, but they really get bit by the COPI bug, and then they stay with us. So we have, those are our tentative plans. We also, since day one in Vietnam, we've been working with orphanages. Matter of fact, that was what COPI was first started for, was just orphan care, to try to help out orphanages. We've maintained our contact with the orphanages. We maintain our support for orphanages throughout the country. And the one thing that we just talked about at the last meeting that we're going to try to develop more is maintaining contact with these orphans after they leave the orphanage, and maintain support for them, because we are fortunate. I mentioned that we go on our admin trip around TAT. And one of the things we do is we travel around to all our schools and orphanages, and we hand out lisi, which is lucky money, loosely translated, and it's usually a tradition of they give that to children over TET, and it's lucky for the new year. But we have little red envelopes that we give to all the caregivers. So when we go to the schools and orphanages the week before TET, we give red envelopes to all the caregivers that help us 12 months of the year taking care of our kids, and it's not a lot of money by our standards, but it's traditionally about an extra month's pay for them. So they are very appreciative for it. But while we are giving these all away, some of the work is at orphanages, and we get invited at one orphanage in Govap, which is outside of Ho Chi Minh City. It's an orphanage where 80% of the children that are there are disabled in some way. So it's a very challenging environment for the caregivers. But what's amazing to me is they have a party for TET every year, and we are invited. If we're in town, we are invited to go, and we have gone.
Wow.
And what's amazing to me is the number of people. Once you're 18, you have to leave the orphanage, of course. So it's the number of adults who return on TET to celebrate, because the tradition is you spend TET with your family, and this is their family. So they come. If they're married and have kids, they bring their kids with them to this orphanage, and I think that's one of the things one of the places where we realize that people need support even after they leave. When they're 18, nobody waves a magic wand and says, okay, everything's okay now, you're good to go. So if they're going to school or on to college, they need support as well.
True.
So we're trying to develop a formal program where we can help these kids once they have reached age of 18 and are forced to leave the orphanage.
It's really heartening to hear that, COPI has managed to overcome all these obstacles in recent years and are continuing to support these kids, in all facets of their life, wherever possible. Is there a way for us to continue to support COPI? What would be the best ways of doing so at this point?
I think the best way right now is Tuesday is coming up, and it's called Giving Tuesday. So go to our website, which is www.childrenofpeace.org, and you can contribute there via credit card or PayPal. And if you make your contribution and put in your comments where you would like your money to go. I personally see every one of these contributions. So we'll make sure that your money is steered where you'd like it. So if you'd like it to go to scholarships, just say scholarships. If you'd like it to go to orphan care or to medical missions or whatever strikes your fancy, you can put that in the comments. But that's the best way. And if you go there in the next few days, you will see our existing website. But if you'll give us probably a week or so, we've got a brand new site that we're launching, and we're really excited about it. So be sure to go back. We'll send out an announcement once it's live. But we've been developing it throughout the year. It's another thing that while we were home here and had nothing to do, we developed our website, and I have to thank our board member, Tim Fashing. He's done a lot of work on developing the new website, and when it launches, we're going to be very proud of it, and I think everybody will like it. So,
sure. Thank you so much, Mike. It's exciting to hear everything that COPI has in the works right now. And
thank you, Keith. It's great to talk to you, and anytime, glad to talk to you.
Thank you so much.